have been raising so many human rights issues through the people's organizations and movements. But we find that the powers generally do not hold the constitutional rights and human rights uh, in all their decision-making processes, governance, and actions. Since 2014, last 6 years, we have seen that the government is openly violating and impinging upon the human rights. And this is not only as the toiling masses, but also as caste-based and communal-based violence. And they generally are upholding those perspectives with pride, because not only that they know that the vote banks are based on those discriminations, but that they have this ideology of fundamentalism, and they do not mind going with that approach as long as they can win not only power in terms of the political power, but also the social power. So the Modi's perspective and the paradigm followed in India has been based on all kinds of discriminations. We have seen that the women's rights are absolutely in the doldrums, because the whole Manuvadi, as we call it, the traditional way of looking at women as either Devi or Dasi, the goddess or the servant, that has been doing so much injustice to the women, and they face cumulative inequity in terms of economic, political, social equity as well. But the women's contribution increased over years as the education reached out to them, and also the new sources of livelihoods came into their hands. But now it is not that kind of development which would save women from attacks, because the physical attack has been increasing. Even looking at the women's issues, one realized that he never really counters any propaganda against women. He never really supports the cause of atrocities against women. And if he speaks out, it is only when the people raise the issue to a large extent. Seen that as far as the workers' rights are concerned, the legal regime becomes very important, because there is no level playing field between the investors, the factory and industry owners, the corporates, and the workers. But the very fact that this government has repealed 44 labor legislations, which came into being since the freedom movement onwards, when the labor movement has been at its peak time and again. And each section of laborers have claimed their rights, whether they are contract laborers or women laborers, and got something in their hands with which the judiciary can take cognizance of the violations. But now, with this labor legislations repealed, the workers' human rights are going to be seriously affected. The worst is the communal attack, and the violence is up in the air today. And while the riots have taken place even before, this time the mob lynching is the most inhuman exercise that they are resorting to, and that is always protected by the rulers. So Modi government has also put many people behind bars without they getting any evidence to prove that Umar Khalid or other students from JNU or Jamia Millia were really involved in violence. Now, same has happened regarding one doctor in UP and a few others, but the rest are still behind the bars, and their incarceration is based on absolutely false, not just allegations, but the social media campaign to the false sections applied and cases filed against them. And there is no justice accruing to all those, even in terms of the bail that can be granted to any such person, even the highest level criminals. So this is what is happening in India. The Dalits also faced hell, and the Rohit Vemulla's suicide really brought them together and made them rise up and fight. But then many Dalit youths who really went to Bhima Koregaon faced jail. Yes, I think every time activists or organizations join hands as human rights activists, there is some statement or some kind of support coming from the international networks. But the present government also attacks them immediately, like the farmers movement, which is on, supported by Trudeau from Canada. Now, in Canada, the Sikhs are in the power positions as well. When they had invited me to Toronto, I remember how much power they have, and one cannot believe. And same is in UK and some other countries about the other sects as well. But the Canadian leader supporting farmers' movement was immediately attacked, saying that it is an interference into the national matters. So when Mr. Modi claims that he wants to and he has become a Vishwa Guru, and when the globalization liberalization paradigm is the main pillar of our economy today, that is really destroying even application of laws of the land and every institution in India, including the constitutional authorities and the other pillars of democracy. They have no moral right to say so, but they immediately attack anyone who brings in an internationalism. The Adivasis, the indigenous people as they're called, have always faced encroachments upon their natural resource matrix, which is the capital, an indispensable capital for any development activity. And yet they are called to be poor and as if they are resourceless. The Adivasis, on one hand, have the self-reliant lifestyle, and that goes with their simplicity and resourcefulness. But their technology, their simple lifestyle, their sources of livelihood are on one hand considered as symbols or the indicators of backwardness, and on the other hand, those very resources which are in their hands are being snatched away. The ISA Act, for example, which is based on the the section part 9 and 5th schedule in the constitution and not beyond its framework, which granted the rights to Adivasis to live with their resources and also determine what development paradigm they have to take up. And those rights are now not being granted to them. The latest decision of Madhya Pradesh government, for example, is also very, very serious, that 37 lakh square kilometer forest is going to be handed over to corporates in a way, because although they are saying it is a PPP, forest officials with whom we discussed also agree that once the corporates come in and their investment would matter, the officials' role and the space will be reduced, and that will have a serious impact on the Adivasis' life and livelihood. The judiciary, being a pillar of democracy, really have had a major role in protection of human rights. But recently, if one looks at the various judgments, whether it is related to Ayodhya or whether it is related to Narmada kind of development project, we find that the judiciary is not really going down to earth and looking at the real situation, but is really either confused or co-opted. And that co-option comes with the pressures from the rulers who really have their own corporate vision or their own communal vision. And the judiciary also have the judges who are corrupt, which has been proved, not one would not say it otherwise. And there are judges who have come out and said what is going wrong within the judiciary, but one or two of them again got to support the politicians and got the power positions themselves inside the legislatures. So all this really is telling us that we cannot as movements anymore depend either on the legislative decision making processes or interventions or the judicial interventions against the human rights violations. And hence the people's movement, the people's power, the people's politics and the people's courts and tribunals are being put up by all those progressive forces which are fighting the battles on one issue or the larger transformation. Happy Human Rights Day to everyone, all of you and everyone across India and the world.